Welcome back, reality-based athletes and coaches. We are at the office today, a little bit of a change in environment, so hope this works for you. Really excited about the topic today. Big topic. I am talking about the plague. It is the plague of learned helplessness. This is the opposite of personal accountability, and this is the number one thing that is killing our teams and athletes and young athletes and professional athletes. It is the number one thing that is just killing us right now in sports. What is learned helplessness? The best way to describe it is through a story. Visual representation, they always help me. So let's see if this works here. Say I had this cup and I was to take fleas and I was gonna put them in this cup. Now, instinctively, what are they gonna do? They can jump 10, 15 feet in the air. They'll jump right out, right away. But let's say instead I put the fleas in there and then I threw a lid on top of that cup. Those fleas are gonna do the same thing that they always do. They're gonna jump as high as they can to get out of there. And they're gonna go pop, 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 hitting against the top of that lid. Until eventually, those fleas who can jump so high are gonna stop right below where that lid is at. If you go the next step and you take the lid off of the glass, those fleas will only jump into that spot that they were jumping. They have learned helplessness, that they cannot get over that obstacle. They believe that their actions have no impact on their outcomes. Those fleas in here are just like us, young and in love. They start to mate, they start to have little flea babies. And the crazy thing about that is, with that lid still off, those babies, the offspring of those fleas that now have learned helplessness, they will only jump to the same point. They have learned from their elders that this is just one obstacle we can't overcome. That lid, which is not even there, is now an obstacle we can't overcome either. Are these fleas capable of jumping out with the lid off? Of course they are. I mean, it's in their genes. They can jump 10 feet in the air. But do they even try from this point on? They don't. What does that tell us about sports? How many athletes have tried a skill one time, they got a little bit embarrassed, and then that is now a lid on their game? They can never be a good shooter. They will, academically, they will never be good at math. My whole family's never been able to go to college. How am I? Our whole family is unathletic. How could I be, a college basketball player or a really coordinated, skilled golfer or something like that? That is learned helplessness, and it is the opposite of personal accountability. And what often happens is the moment you fall into learned helplessness, where you think your actions have no impact on the outcomes, that becomes a habit where it just begins to solidify that the moment you run into an obstacle, your eyes kind of glaze over and you give up. And that is learned helplessness visually. And that is what happens with many athletes that I see is, they tried a skill one time, teammates laughed at them, they turned the ball over, it didn't look very pretty, and they immediately never want to try the skill again. Or they go in half-heartedly, they give half-hearted attempts at the skill, and then they kind of laugh about it when they don't get it, and it's all a way to protect your ego and not actually try and get any better. Be very careful. Once you fall into the plague of learned helplessness, you will start to tell yourself a story about what is possible and impossible with your sports or anything in life, and that story will inform the amount of effort you put in. And once that happens, you will start to attribute your lackluster results in something to your fake wholehearted efforts. So then you'll come up with a story that you were actually trying really hard, you didn't get the results you want, and it becomes a vicious cycle of never quite giving full effort. Where have I done this? Oh, so many times. But the main time I did this is I have something I dealt with as an athlete. It was a hip condition where my hip wasn't as flexible as other athletes. It was something I needed to work on. I needed to stretch it out. I would go to my doctor and he said, your hip is a little stiff right now, but if you do regular stretching and physical therapy and this and that, you can eventually have the same flexibility as any other athlete, normal kid. What did I do? I took that as kind of an excuse. I tried to do a little bit of stretching and it hurt and it made me uncomfortable. And so then I said, oh, I tried, but it makes no difference. I had become learned helpless to that stretching thing. And so what I went back and rewrote history, I said, oh, you know, every time we lifted and the lift was weird on my legs, I'd say, yeah, I got this hip thing, I can't do that. I had solidified a story about an obstacle that I could not overcome. And I believed it. I believed it for so long. And then I kind of finally realized towards the end of my career that that was a limiting belief that I had, and I was not accountable at all about what I could do to actually impact, you know, my flexibility in my hip. So where is this all going for us as athletes and students and those trying to reach, you know, peak performance? Think about all the things that you don't think you can do. You can learn anything. You can develop in anything. Figure out a belief that you haven't tested in a while. Figure out a skill that you know how to do that you haven't tested if you could improve on it in a while. You may just find that you have fallen into the plague of learned helplessness without even knowing it. And once you're there, you will always dodge personal accountability and fall into learned helplessness, come up with a story to justify, you know, why it's not possible for you, and it'll become an obstacle that you can never overcome because you're believing something in your head that you know, have convinced yourself of. There are two sides. You can either be personally accountable, which you've talked about, or you can be in learned helplessness. But the moment you cross into one, then you're not being the other. So I encourage you, from here on out, take a moment to self-reflect and think about where are you limiting yourself with a belief you haven't tested in a while, and go and look at it and be like, you know, what can I do to actually test that? See if, you know, I can improve on it. See if I can make progress on it. So learned helplessness, again, the belief that your actions have no impact on your outcomes and what you do does not affect the situation. Personal accountability, I choose my own destiny. See the big difference and see where the plague starts. You do it one time, it's a domino effect. Thank you for watching this video. I hope this was some great content to see where you may be limiting yourself, where you may have the lid on your, you know, progress or potential, and think about where you can take the lid off or jump out. Maybe the lid's already off and you can jump out and start, you know, really making some good progress. Let me know what you think. Give it a like if you enjoyed the video. Tell me some comments in the bottom, things where places you might see this come up. Let's talk about it. I'll see you next time. Happy playing days. You know, let's keep ditching the drama.
So just because it's been said before doesn't mean that you don't need to hear it. And just because I'm not the first to follow doesn't mean that I can't feel